image. This is not a very good recreation. I have better pictures. Let's write. This is like where they superimpose color over the shroud. And we have the three-dimensional properties of the shroud are very good, and they're important. Why? They're important because in the shroud image, the cheek images, you see the roundness of the cheeks, but the cheeks are never stronger than the nose. The nose has a much stronger image. And the swelling on the cheek is not stronger than the nose, but it's stronger than the cheek. In direct proportion, okay? Whereas in Garlischelli's image, the cheeks shoot out past the nose. That tells you that the image intensity does not vary in direct relationship to how far the body part was away from the cloth. That means it wasn't radiated on the cloth. I mean, the shroud. The reason that's important that the shroud has three-dimensional properties is that it demonstrates that whatever made this image was radiated onto the cloth. That's why we have these three-dimensional properties. Okay, so just right there. I mean, I really don't even have to go further. I mean, right there, he's refuted. So, but let me go on for those of you just to get the big picture here. Now, here we have the shroud that's 14.5 feet long, 3.5 feet wide. And this is, it says do not touch here, but I'm not touching it. This is, it looks like I'm touching it, but I'm not, okay? This is a giant slide of the shroud. It's not the actual shroud. It's Kodak put together a reconstruction. Oh, another thing that's in the news, another reason the shroud has been in the news lately is because they took these super-duper high-resolution pictures of the shroud. I mean, what they did is they took this ultra-high-resolution camera, and they take postage stamp size shots that are like 1,000,000 megapixels. I'm exaggerating, but they've got it down from a microscopic level so they can recreate a picture of the shroud that would be like the size of the Empire State Building. So you could see it fibril by fibril. And that's what's recently been done, is they've taken these and we're still getting more information out of the cloth. So that's another reason it's been in the news. Because of things like this, it has tons of credibility. Lots of very credible. You know how many scientists at Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory are still working on shroud data? Anybody know what the Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory is used for?
It's a nuclear.
Yes, that's where we make nuclear bombs. Yeah, I mean the scientists down there to this day are still working on this stuff. Okay, now the question was, because if you go to YouTube, you'll hear them talk about it. And what's funny is that, it's like, we've got all these projects involved in mass destruction and so forth. And, they get a sample of the shroud, and they will, like, stop work. Just, it's from the shroud, move it to the head, because they love working on stuff. These are not Christians, by the way. The people doing this work, they're not funded by any churches. Okay, this is not, so you take a look at the Shroud of Turin research product comprised of about 70 scientists. Now, I work with Dr. Giles Carter at Eastern Michigan, and he was part of the ancillary Shroud of Turin research people, okay? And his job was to determine whether or not the shroud could have been produced by natural means. Could X-rays have done it, like from plutonium? And I worked with Dr. Carter back in the 1980s. And so of all the people that worked on the shroud, these people did not come in here saying, Christians, this is not a Christian organization. But it was unanimous that of all the people on the team, nobody said that the image was produced by pigments. There was no argument here. There are no pigments on this cloth. One guy, Dr. Walter McCrone, who I'll talk about next time, who was an ancillary member, was convinced that iron oxide pigment did it. And anyway, it's a long story. I'll get to him later. But anyway, from the way that the image is on the cloth, we can see that this is the way that it wrapped around the body. Okay? So the body was laid down here, and then you wrapped it over the body like that. Now, the image was radiated on the cloth. In order for it to have the image like it is, it had to have been relatively flat over his face. Okay? Now, how did that happen? Because if you just take the cloth and wrap it the way it's shown here, then it would drape. Okay? It would, by gravity, it would drape over the face. What is believed happened was that blocks of spice, the aloes and myrrh, were packed in block form next to the body. And because these were next to the body, the shroud then laid over the body like a photo, like a piece of film. And so when the body said poof, that's where the image was then blasted onto the cloth like a photographic plate. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying here? Okay, and we have evidence for that. Number one, the Bible describes the spices, okay, and we know that they didn't wash the body. We know that they didn't smear the spices on the body. Why? Well, what were the Marys doing at the tomb on Sunday morning? Why did they go there? Yeah, to finish the job. They didn't smear the spices. They hadn't washed the body yet. They couldn't because the Sabbath was coming. So they stopped work. So they left the spices there next to the body in block form, and then they left. Now we also, if you take a look at the shroud, we can actually find the spices on the cloth. Okay, so that's consistent. So we have the documentation in the New Testament, plus we find it here. So there's good, and plus the way that the image is blasted onto the cloth, it had to have been relatively flat in order to have produced this image. Okay, am I losing anybody? Because I know it's kind of technical. You still follow me? Okay. Well, when radiation affects it, okay, now what happens is that, depends on the type, because radiation is a general term. When I get to the future presentation, I'll talk about that. But basically, when you're looking at particle radiation is not like gamma ray. A gamma ray, it doesn't matter how far away, you're just going to blast through everything because it's so powerful. If you're looking at particle like electron radiation, what happens is that the farther you go in the air, the weaker it becomes because it's hitting air molecules. All right, and so then the image that the power of an electron here is less than a power of an electron here. Like here's my cloth. The closer we are to the cloth, the more powerful the energy. The farther away, the less powerful the energy. Okay, so if I got something way back here on my cheek, by the time it reaches the cloth, it's not going to be strong enough to cause the oxidation that this will. And so the farther you get away, the less powerful, and that's what gives you the three-dimensional map of the face. Does that make sense?
Okay,
so what he did...
Still imprint some kind of pigment on the cloth?
No, there's no pigment. What happens, it's not putting pigment on the cloth, it's literally damaging the cloth. That's why the picture that we see, like here's the shroud right here. Okay, what you're looking at, this image is not paint. What you're looking at is the product of dehydrative acid oxidation resulting in the formation of a yellow carbonyl chromophore. So essentially, you've aged the cloth in the shape of a body. So where you see image, that's under the microscope. When we get to the future presentation, I'll show you the fibers under the microscope. There is no pigment there. The image, the cloth has been oxidized in that, and so it's browner there because of the energy. Does that now you understand? Okay. Now here we see a bad color photograph. I have some better pictures, but this is an old slideshow. But this is